Hi, I'm a former higher ed CMO, and I have a confession to make. About 7 years ago, a headhunter told me that because I was at a smaller and less resourced institution, I wouldn't be attractive in a pool for an institution that was an R1 research university. And I am still a little bit bitter about that and also proud of myself because I did get offered that job. And spoiler alert, I didn't end up taking it. But that really started me thinking about how folks at smaller institutions are faced with this misperception that the work that they do isn't as intense or creative or innovative as that which is happening at larger institutions. And every time I talk about this with my friend Shane Baglini, we say the same things. We really need people to understand the level of creativity and innovation that's happening at some of these small schools. Shane is currently the executive director of marketing and branding at the College of William and Mary, where he oversees strategic planning and execution of the university's integrated marketing, multimedia, and creative teams. And he, like I, came from a smaller institution that had fewer resources, and he and I both agree that that is an asset and not a detriment. I hope you enjoy this show.
If you look deeper, the thing that you're getting from somebody from a small school is you're getting somebody who's going to bust their tail for you because it's the only way they know how to operate. It's the only way they've been successful in their current role. Because if you're not busting your tail, it's clear. If somebody's qualified for a position, they're qualified for a position regardless of where they're at.
You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO with Jaime Hunt, your source for insight and inspiration on the issues shaping higher ed marketing. From AI and branding to enrollment strategy and leadership, each episode explores the ideas, challenges, and opportunities facing today's marketing leaders. Let's get into it. Hey, Shane, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to finally have you on the show.
I know, right?
I feel like we've been talking about this for years.
My bucket list is complete.
Nice. Now you can retire.
Yeah.
Shane, one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is how coming from small shops means that we know how to stretch a dollar and we know how to be innovative within restricted resources. And I think that's an issue for a lot of folks in higher ed. A lot of folks in higher ed are really under-resourced or have really tiny teams, and they really want to be able to understand how to leverage it. But one of the other things you and I have talked about is sometimes when we've both interviewed for jobs at bigger, better resourced schools, and I have actually been told in a search once, like, well, you don't know how to manage a whatever amount million budget. So I wanted to chat through sort of some of the experiences that we had running small shops and how we think that is actually gives us an advantage when it comes to leading a Marcon team. So I'll start with, like, when you think back to those small shop years, which of those conditions, a small budget, a small team, the urgency that comes with being in a small shop, which one of those shaped you the most? Or is it like, yes, all of them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of yes, all of them. But I mean, if I had to choose one, it would be the urgency piece of things. I think small schools, small teams, limited resources kind of go hand in hand with pressure, like pressure to enroll students, to land the gift, to do more with less. Not every small school, if you're at one of the smaller schools that's lucky enough to be well financed and have nice endowments and things like that, you're a little bit more flexible. But the small schools I've been at have been what I've just described. And so, when you think about the workloads of a small team, when you've got one of each, you got one videographer, one writer, one photographer, that urgency is multiplied because you're wearing so many hats at once, and you're, like you said, you're trying to stretch the dollar so thin, and in many cases, your school lacks any real brand authority in the marketplace, and so you're trying to compete with larger schools with larger budgets on a shoestring. All those things make things really challenging at a small school. But to me, it's the urgency piece of things that, if you were to point to burnout, that's probably the thing that I would point to.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that when I thought about how I would answer this question. Like I was thinking, like, for me, it was the budget that was really challenging. Like, I had this phenomenal team. When I was at Winston-Salem State, I tell them this all the time, the most innovative, creative, amazing professionals. And we wanted to do so much more than we were able to do because the budget was so limited. And so we had to be super creative with how we spent that budget and allocated those dollars, and be more creative in the earned and owned media space than we could be with the paid media space. But you're right, that urgency, that like one designer, one photographer, one videographer, there's no backups for anybody. Somebody goes on maternity leave and you just don't have that function.
Right. You're without a graphic designer for 3 months.
I remember when I first started at Winston-Salem State, the creative director was like 8 months pregnant. And I didn't know that when I interviewed. And then on my first day, I was like, oh, okay, there's something going on here. And we actually had to bring somebody in from the outside because there was no way to not continue to move stuff forward for 3 months. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to like come back in 6 weeks or whatever. But yeah, it's challenging times. I'm curious about what you think that people at larger universities might believe about small shop Marcom. What misperceptions do you think are out there?
Yeah, this is a great. I was excited to answer this one when I sent it over. I mean, you touched on it already. To me, this is an easy one. The myth is that being at a small school makes you less qualified to move to a larger institution somehow. The reality is literally the opposite. If I'm exceeding goals, if I'm growing enrollment, if I'm running a capital campaign and building relationships and managing a website and enrollment and Marcom with 4 staff members under me, imagine what I could do with 24. Right. So I think for folks at small schools that might be looking to make a leap, how do you translate that value in your materials, in your interviews, to say that these things translate to any size, big or small? Leadership translates, innovation translates, like all of these things carry over no matter the size of the school. And I think similarly, I've been told just straight up, you didn't get the job because you work at a small school. Oh. And so, I'm appreciative to my current institution, William & Mary, for being able to see through that and understand that these things do transition well from a smaller shop to a larger shop, and expanding somebody's resources who's been, so strapped for time and money and bandwidth, giving them that sort of, it's like you could take a breath of fresh air. I have people that could do these things that I've always wanted to do, but we've had to focus on 10 other things. So to me, that's the biggest myth, is that somehow you're less qualified because you're at a small shop. I think the opposite is true.
I think it's really funny that the institutions that we both went from small shops to are both public Ivies. Like that's just like a fascinating, I went to Miami of Ohio, which is a public Ivy. It's just fascinating. We both went to public Ivies for that. I completely agree. I mean, I think when I first started at WSSU, it was like 7 people. When I left, it was like 18. And then I went to a shop where I think I had between 65 and 70. And I was like, what do you mean I have 7 designers? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean I have multiple people working on social? This is what do you mean? Like, I feel like I said, what do you mean? Like 15 times. But I remember being like, no, I can eke out so much stuff out of this budget. I can do so much more with this budget than you even expect, because I've had to stretch every single penny in my last role. And it's just so unfortunate that I think we both heard that from different types of institutions, and it was really frustrating. Like I'm crushing it here.
Very frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, the large majority of higher ed is smaller institutions. We think about the R1s and the flagships and the teams of 90 that are winning awards. It's like, great, you have 90 people on your team. Right. I have 4. We are not the same. You're doing great work, but it's at a different scale. So I think the scrappiness that you have to have at a small institution does carry over to a lot of sizes of schools.
I remember Winston-Salem State, we won a case award for like most innovative online program or something like that. And we beat NC State, who has, I believe, well over 100 communicators. And I love Brad Bolander, who was there at the time, but I was sort of like, haha, like we are doing super innovative stuff with our team of, I probably at that time 9, and no other communicators on the entire campus. There wasn't decentralized communicators. It was 9 of us.
Yeah.
What do you think are the top 3 skills that you built working in a small shop that have become a leadership advantage for you now?
There's a couple. So one is discernment, and what I mean by that is when you're at a small school, you can't fight every battle. You can't die on every hill. You need to know which battles are worth fighting and how to prioritize your work. I mean, we've talked about burnout already, but I think when you're in a small shop and you're stretched so thin, you don't have time to just constantly be disagreeing with people, and you'll burn out and you'll ruin relationships at a very small place that you need to. It's not like you'll never see these people again because you're at a massive institution. You need those relationships. So I think discerning when to sort of fight the battle is one. I think more practically, managing a small team got me ready to manage a larger team. I think if I would have gone from no management experience to a team of 20, it would be much, much more difficult to transition to that sort of operation. And then poise. I think when you're running in 15 different directions, you don't really have time to be overwhelmed. Like you've sort of got to compartmentalize what you're doing every day and understand that like 5 o'clock is going to come and I'm going to go home and relax. But during those 9 hours that you're there, or at your desk at home, you sort of have to be tunnel vision to say, I need to get these things done or else I'm going to get behind and there's nobody else to pick up the slack because we're on a small team. So I think I was able to sort of hone my mental capacity, the ability to context switch, things like that, being on a small team.
How did you sell that to William and Mary? Like, how did you position yourself to be a successful candidate there?
It's nice to have on your resume that you're increasing enrollment and things like that with small teams. So that to me was an easy thing to translate. Interestingly, this goes back a little bit to my early career. I graduated with a degree in sport management and I started my career in sports. And I worked at some pretty large venues in front of, thousands and thousands of people. And when you're making decisions in real time in front of a full arena, again, there's no time to lose your cool and your composure. And so translating from that to being able to sit at a desk and think about things and knowing how slow higher ed moves, we could think about things a lot. It makes it so much easier to make the right decision. And I think for me, that's been a huge value. And some of that then is some of that you can gain at a smaller school. You're not making decisions necessarily in front of thousands of people every day, but you're making decisions that affect a very small team and add work to their plate. And you've got to have the poise and the sort of the building of trust to make sure that when you do that, your colleagues and peers are knowing it's for a reason.
Yeah. I think something you said earlier about the relationship building. I mean, I think being at a smaller institution, I had to hone a poker face because the relationships were so important. And so I had to hone sort of that executive presence of like, what you said is literally nuts. And I am going to just smile and be like, that's an interesting perspective. But that is so beneficial then when you get to a bigger place to be able to have that sort of poise and confidence and facial control that gives you that executive presence that I think sometimes people think at small schools, it's like, oh, it's like down on the farm, or I don't know, like
right, yeah,
something more neighborly or something. But it to me, like the amount that I grew my executive presence just by having to be like, you cannot damage a relationship with a facial expression.
Yes.
You can't roll your eyes. You can't, whatever, fix your face. Was so helpful.
And sometimes that's kind of what I mean by the discernment. Like sometimes you have to. And when you get to that point, if you've not been a perennial disagreeer and somebody that doesn't have a poker face, it comes across as more authentic. It's not you just, oh, Shane's disagreeing with me again. When you finally do find that hill to die on, people understand that, oh, this is the first time in a while that Shane's done this, that he must feel pretty strongly about this.
I think if people are listening to this and they're feeling like, oh, wait, I don't pick my battles, I just battle everything. Like, let this be your permission to pick and choose. Because I would tell my team all the time, sometimes it's strategic to do something that isn't strategic. If it's positioning a relationship that you may need down the road, or it's not a difficult thing and it makes somebody have a warm fuzzy about your department and be an ally. Like sometimes that's strategic.
Yeah, taking somebody for coffee can be very strategic.
For sure. So we talked a little bit about how like you have one of everything, and then as a leader, you end up wearing every hat and have to fill in when the one thing is out. One person, now you're doing it. How did you prevent burnout while still delivering results?
This is probably to me is the biggest challenge for small teams. It's the thing I've seen most lead to people leaving the industry altogether and the school specifically. But like even when you're at you're at the VP or cabinet level, you're going from drafting a statement on a war in the Middle East to reviewing UX design for a website redesign. Like, how do you context switch? And that takes a toll on your brain. You can't. Mm-hmm. There's interesting studies out there about what back-to-back meetings does to your brain. Like you need 15 minutes in between these things to think clearly, but you don't have that time. And so one of the things that I've just tried to do, like it may sound small, but just little things like team outings, lunches, happy hours, meetings where we don't talk about work at all. It kind of to your point, like doing something non-strategic is strategic. It's just small little things to build culture, to take a break, enhance morale, give people something to laugh about. Like even during COVID, which was the most challenging to do these things in, every Friday my team and I would meet for COVID cocktails at 4 p.m. and just decompress for an hour or whatever, and then log off. But little things like that I do think go a long way. I know it's probably like, well, I'm going to be behind on work then if I leave an hour early, but we don't have surgery scheduled in the morning. It'll be here. It'll be here tomorrow. So let's duck out early and do something fun.
I like that. I found that gratitude went a long way, especially if you can get the gratitude of people outside the department, like back to your team. If you can get your president to, stop by the office and talk about how great things are, or, if you can get the VP for student affairs to send a note and say, wow, we really appreciate that you went above and beyond. Like having that appreciation and feeling valued. To me, like I would say for me as a consultant, I'm probably working as many hours as I was when I was on a campus, but there's something different about it when you get like the gratitude from a client, or like you're not in like that BS of politics and stuff like that. There's something, I think that gratitude and that appreciation go a really long way for teams.
Yeah, totally agree. I think one of the other things that's great about being part of a small team and a large team, but when you're in the trenches with 10 to 15 people for literally everything, you become close as a team really quickly. And that's something that kind of can buoy people as well.
Yeah. Gonna hit pause for a second to share some awesome news. If you or your team are looking for practical strategies to crush operational bottlenecks and scale engagement with AI, then the Engage Summit 2026 in Charlotte needs to be your destination this June 15th through the 17th. From hands-on sessions to main stage keynotes showing how AI transforms enrollment and retention, Engage Summit is the place to level up your institution's game in ways you probably didn't realize were possible. You'll walk away with tools, frameworks, and connections that actually move the needle, and people who will keep pushing you forward long after the conference ends. The good news, spots are still available, and the even better news, Enrollify listeners can get 50% off the ticket price. Yes, half off. Just head to engage.element451.com and use code HUNT50. That's HUNT50. Now back to the show. Yeah, my team from Winston-Salem State, so I left there almost 6 years ago. They've had one person retire and one person leave because her husband got relocated or transferred. Everybody else is still there. Yeah. And I really chalk that up to that, like it's cliched, but we became a family in a way.
Yeah.
Where we had each other's backs and we developed a team shield. And it was like, the idea was like, everybody might be fighting us, we can't fight each other, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I love that.
I loved that. I miss them. What's the most innovative solution you created because you didn't have the money or the staff to do it in the normal way.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it innovative, but at my last school that I was at, we chose to not renew essentially a $300,000+ contract that essentially represented our whole operating budget.
Wow.
For this, and this was for grad and adult ed. And so with the money that we saved, we hired digital marketing specialists that could do our campaigns in house. We implemented a new CRM. We actually, the innovative part of this is maybe that we walked away from Slate to another platform.
Oh,
wow. And then we partnered with another agency as a consultant. This employee was still young in his career and needed some guidance, but it was a much more affordable relationship. And so they were kind of an extension of our team. So with all of those budget savings and what we were doing in house, it just freed us up to do so many things that we couldn't do before. We could hire better designers. We could produce better videos because we had the budget versus sinking all of our money into just a giant contract. So I don't know if it's innovative, but it was the most effective and impactful thing that we did.
Well, and I think the idea of innovation as coming up with a new solution to solve a problem versus, I don't think innovation has to be nobody else has ever done this before or whatever. I think it just has to be like a really impactful solution to a problem. And you solved that problem, and it sounds like, masterfully. I love that. I'm curious about your thoughts on how constraints really sharpen creativity. I found that to be the case. And how do you shift a mindset? I talk to a lot of people who can't seem to get around or get past the thought that they don't have the resources that they feel that they need to do something. Like, how do you shift that mindset?
Yeah, I think this is one of the positives of a small team is that you need to prioritize your work. You're not just choosing to. Like you can't take every request if it falls lower on the priority list. And I think one of the things about working on a smaller campus is that people understand that a little bit more because they're in the same boat. Like they understand that, okay, there's a team of 14 people here, not 70. It makes sense that you're going to prioritize a view book over my project that I think is the most important. Yeah. So interestingly, there was always a better adoption of no on those campuses. I think people were just more understanding that this is a small team. I have a small team. I get it. And they were pretty amenable to that. I think when you're able to focus on what matters the most, and you importantly have support from the top of the organization down. So you need the president to be able to do this. When you're able to say no and focus on what matters, it surprisingly opens up a lot of room for creativity for a small team. That sounds like it's counter to what you'd be expecting when you're stretched so thin, but when you have the latitude and the understanding from the campus community to say no and to prioritize, you just simply save time by not having to go back and forth via email. Like these little half-hour stretches that are opened up to you because people have all sort of bought into the fact that we all have to make the most out of our time. That's one of the things that, at least for us at my previous institution, did sharpen creativity. We were able to think more and not have to constantly be acting.
I see often teams that are small, when they do have resources, they outsource the funnest stuff or the most creative stuff to outside vendors. And so, like when I was at WSSU, everything was done in-house. Our entire rebrand was done in-house. Everything was done in-house. And it was hard and it was heavy work, but the team got to do the fun stuff. They were designing the view books. They were designing the brand book. They were, it was very rewarding work for them. And if we did have money to outsource, it was like outsourcing those projects that nobody wants to do and keeping people focused on those high creativity projects. And I think that gives better job satisfaction when you're able to do that.
Totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, right. If you're taking away the fun stuff, people are just going to feel bogged down in the stuff that's not the busy work that you don't want to do.
Yeah. And I actually talk to a lot of people who talk about that. Like, we outsource the fun design projects to an agency and we're stuck resizing digital ads into 14 different sizes. Yeah. And that's tedious and we hate it. And I think that's really common. So, I would encourage people who are listening, like, is there a way you can rebalance that portfolio back toward allowing folks to do some of those more creative pieces, even with writing the view books or writing for the magazines. That's more fun than writing yet another announcement of a faculty member getting an award or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really curious. So when you shifted from a small institution to a better resourced, larger environment, what small shop instincts have really kicked in to solve problems or avoid waste or fill in the blank?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think it's the urgency that I mentioned before. I think it's for me when I moved to a larger shop, but I have the background of like we can't lose a student in this environment, or if we lose 10 students from our class, people may lose their jobs type of urgency. So I think that translates anywhere. And when you come into a school that has a bigger brand and probably fewer enrollment struggles, I think there tends to be some complacency at times. It's one thing that I've not noticed at William & Mary, but I can see at probably other places. You sort of just rest on your laurels. Yeah. And so instilling that urgency across campus, I think, should be one of the biggest value adds that people consider for people from small shops. We're an incredibly competitive market, and unless you're one of those cream of the crop institutions that truly can exist and simply succeed, then you have to be strategic and you have to be urgent and you have to be competitive. You have to want to win. Like, those are the things that I think, the intangible things that translate to anywhere, are the things that I learned in a small shop and have carried over. Whether it's reality or not, that if you lose 10 students, bad things will happen, but we should behave like that, and we should try to get every student that we possibly can.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have a moral imperative to try to keep students on campus. For retention purposes and graduation rates and all of that, not just because those numbers are better, but because that's the right thing to do. But yeah, I've been at places where 10 makes or breaks you. And when those margins are so thin, like you're hustling.
It's crazy pressure on marketing teams and admission teams. Would include them as well. It's just the pressure of knowing that basically the financial health of the institution depends on your work is a lot to hold on your shoulders.
Even at the school where I had the team of 65 or 70, there was a lot of pressure of like, we need to hit this net tuition revenue or there will be layoffs. And it's like, and you marketing and you admissions, it's all on you. Have fun. Wait, what? Very, very high intensity stress. There's a lot of listeners I feel very confident are in small shops right now. And for those that are earlier in their career, how do you feel they should intentionally turn what they're experiencing now into a leadership story for when they're ready to move to something different? Bigger.
Yeah, a couple things come to mind for me here. I think it's going to sound counterintuitive. We've been talking about burnout and being stretched thin, but take things on. I think be the person who just gets it done. I heard a quote from President Obama once that I'll paraphrase. Basically, if you're young in your career and you're consistently owning what you need to own and just knocking it out of the park, people will notice. You will become the reliable source that leadership turns to. And so that's a powerful story to tell. I think another piece, you and I have talked about this before. You've told me that the CFO and the CMO should be best friends, and I agree completely. I think if you're lower in the organization, especially at a small school, there's a chance that you will find yourself talking to the CFO more so than at a larger school. That access just doesn't exist. So you need to be able to hang in those conversations. You don't have to be a financial planner, but if you need to be literate and capable of understanding what you're looking at, what you're hearing, and be able to contribute, those things go a long way as well.
I think that's such good advice. And honestly, at a smaller institution, you're right. You probably have better access to all of these things. I was just talking to someone who asked me, how do I get a position, like my position as the head of marketing that doesn't report to the president? How do I get at the cabinet? And it's like exactly what you're saying. You need to be someone that people respect the recommendations and advice of. And if you can sort of become friends or build allies with other people around the cabinet, so that when they're in conversations, they can say like, I think we should invite Shane into this conversation. I was talking with him the other day and he has some really good insights. Like, should we invite him to our next meeting about this and get that continued exposure? So try to build those relationships in an authentic way. Don't be like, I'm just going to follow around like this VP and harass them until they are my friend. That felt like my leadership journey in a lot of ways.
Yeah, agreed. And I would say kudos to previous supervisors of mine for giving me those opportunities. I mean, I think if you're listening to this and you're wanting those opportunities, just go talk to your boss and see if it's possible. But they gave me the opportunity to meet with our president and provost quarterly. I met with our CFO and VP for enrollment regularly. And those learning from and talking to those people and being used to being in those environments was invaluable for me in my growth.
Oh, absolutely. You made me think about my very first job. I was a PR coordinator in a tiny shop. I think there were 6 of us. And my boss had me meet with the president every week. And I was in my 20s. And I learned so much about how a university runs, how like all the behind the curtain stuff that a lot of people don't get to see unless they're at the very top. And I'm so grateful to John Healy for like insisting that I have that opportunity, because that really prepped me for like, this is how you behave. Like I would get invited to galas and whatever. And it was like, this is how you behave at these things. This is what executive presence looks like. I don't know if I would be where I am today without that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Same for me. I think like it sounds small, but one of the things that I learned at my previous school was if you're meeting with leadership or cabinet level people, bring an agenda, even if they have their own, because if you don't have an agenda, you're going to get caught off guard because they have a million things on their mind. And if you don't have the answer to it, you don't look great. So if you have an agenda and you come prepared, it'll also leave an impression.
That's fantastic advice from a leader. Please come with an agenda. Don't make the leader have to make the agendas for every single meeting that they have. And then for those people who are listening, who maybe are hiring and looking to bring in someone and they're looking at a pile of resumes and they see someone from a small under-resourced institution, how would you tell them to look at those resumes?
I think it's easy for them probably to just brush it to the side and say, okay, this person has 2 direct reports. This is a team of 20. If you look deeper, the thing that you're getting from somebody from a small school is you're getting somebody who's going to bust their tail for you because it's the only way they know how to operate. And it's the only way they've been successful in their current role. Because if you're not busting your tail, it's clear. Like you can see it in a small team. There's nobody to pick up the slack. So I think for folks like me coming from a small institution, there's no excuses for being too busy or wanting to focus on this thing or that thing when you have one of each person on your team, like we talked about before. If you're lucky, I mean, we didn't even have a photographer at my last school. We outsourced all photography. So now I have 3 under me, and I'm like, okay, let's take 1 million photos a day. It's easy for people to dismiss you because you're from a school they've never heard of, maybe in a place they've never been to. And if you really take the time to just do a little research on these people, you'll find that if you're questioning their qualifications because they're at a small school, you're questioning the wrong thing. If somebody is qualified for a position, they're qualified for a position regardless of where they're at.
There's the soundbite, right?
Yeah.
Like being discriminatory about the size of the institution, the type of institution. I think you're right. It's just kind of silly. I also, so one of the things I've really admired about you, Shane, and your career is that even though you were at a small school, you still got really involved in the higher ed marketing community and the enrollment marketing community. And what made you want to do that? I mean, because you already had limited time.
Yeah.
What made you decide that you want to spend some of that in service to higher ed marketing?
Part of it was honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, watching people like you build their personal networks, things like that, but also knowing that I'm at a small school and there is no opportunity for growth here, for better or for worse. I really enjoyed my time at Muhlenberg, but we just hired a new vice president for marketing. He wasn't leaving anytime soon. He's still there. Love him. But at a certain point, I realized, okay, if I'm going to move up in the world, I need people to know who I am, because the smaller school thing was becoming really, it was becoming a problem for me when interviewing for jobs. So I knew I needed another way to enhance my profile. So really, I just started reaching out to people to see if I could be on their podcast, and one thing led to another. But also, I care a lot about higher ed marketing, and so it's an easy thing to get involved in and support. And just having people there to give you those opportunities. I can think of a few. Joe Master comes to mind. You come to mind. People that have been there, done that, and willing to be in your corner. I wouldn't have that if I didn't start to branch out and build my network.
I can't stress enough how important it is. Like it can be life changing. Like how do you build the network that lets you get the job that is the life changing job or whatever, and then the opportunities that you have to like speak and grow, and all of this started for me when I was working for John Healy. And he was like, "Hey, I think you're a rock star. You need to speak at conferences." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?" And he made me submit a proposal to a case conference, and it got accepted. And I was terrified. And I got on that stage, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this.
That's great.
This is amazing. Oh my gosh, I owe so much to him for pushing that, because I don't know if I would have ever submitted, or at least not submitted that early without him pushing me." So, I mean, again, like listeners, if you're a senior leader, think about like the opportunities that you can give someone who's trying to progress in their career, especially if you know that they're not going to be able to get a lot of advancement where they are because there's not a lot of positions to advance into.
Right. I think another piece of advice I would give to younger professionals is find a recruiter that can see your value and willing to work with you. And also find partners that you're working with in the projects on campus that you can turn to. Again, another name that most people listening to this will know is Mallory Wilsey. Mallory nominated me for Emerging Marketer in 2023 at AMA. Her being willing to put the time into that truly was a life changer for me. Being able to put that, I didn't win. I'm still a little bitter, but but being able to put that that I was a finalist for that national award from a little school like Muhlenberg on my resume made such a difference in the way that people looked at me.
I remember that, and I remember that you being up on they did those little videos, and I was like, "Dang, Shane! Like, wow!" It did dramatically raise your profile. Yeah. I felt like to be a finalist for that.
Yeah, it totally did. And once you start to make relationships with people and kind of like you said, do it authentically. Don't just ask people for things. But when you become close enough with somebody, you can make an ask like that. And if you've done it the right way, they'll be willing to help.
Yeah, I love that. I will never win a Higher Ed Marketer of the Year now that I've left higher ed, and I'm kind of bitter that the rules were such that if you were on the committee, you couldn't win. And so I was like, I'm never going to win this award, but that's okay. I've come to terms with it, sort of. So we're doing a new thing with the show, and that is the last question of the show is, what is your higher ed marketing hottest take?
This took me a while to answer. I have so many. The number one hot take for me is that your institution is not as great as you think it is. And let me explain. I think we all drink the Kool-Aid, right, when we're at our institution. I'm so all in on William and Mary right now. It's just a great place to be.
You're green.
I'm wearing the shirt right now. We all align with the mission of our institution. We have a passion for doing what we do, but that doesn't mean that we're not all Harvard, we're not all Princeton, we're not all Michigan or Purdue and so on. That doesn't mean your school isn't great.
Yeah.
I think, and that's okay. We don't all have to be, we can't all be Princeton. There's one Princeton for a reason. But there are students out there who are the perfect fit for your school. And I think, not everybody wants big time athletics. Not everybody wants an old historic campus. Some people really want big time athletics. There's a way to find the students, but I think the sooner that institutions can level set who they are and who they're actually competing against, the more successful you'll be. So my hot take is that your school isn't as great as you think it is.
I love that. I love that so much. That's such a great hot take. And it's really true. I mean, sometimes you talk to people and you're like, your competitor is not who you think your competitor is. Like that is not accurate. And it's more helpful, I think, to really understand who your competitors actually are and how you differentiate against them versus like, Harvard. You can't differentiate against Harvard when you're,
anybody really. I mean,
anybody.
Unless you're Princeton or Yale, good luck.
Right, for sure. Thank you so much, Shane. This has been such a great conversation, which is fully anticipated. Where can people find you? Because folks should be following you.
Yeah, LinkedIn, Shane Baglini. You can feel free to shoot me an email at sbaglini@wm.edu if you really want to connect and set up time. But I'm not on the other one anymore that I won't mention.
Awesome. And listeners, as always, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, JaimeHunt. And you can find me on my website at solvehighered.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Shane. And let's go bust some silos. Listeners, can I ask you a quick favor? If you enjoy this show, take a moment to give it a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm a type A eldest daughter, so positive feedback is basically my love language. I also genuinely love hearing from listeners. You can find me at LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt. That's JAIMEHUNT. And yes, I am named after the Bionic Woman. You can also find me at solvehighered.com. Say hello, share a thought, pitch an idea. Don't be shy. I genuinely love hearing from you.